Hi, welcome back to Pleasures of the Text. I've been gone a while. I'm a little rusty on this, but I wanted to talk about the books that I read in August. I've obviously been away for a little bit. This was not intentional. It did start off intentional, but then it kind of became this whole thing, and I haven't filmed a video in over a year. That ended up not being intentional. I want to return here for various reasons, but also because I do miss this space, and I missed interacting with people in this way. I miss trying to verbalize my thoughts on the things that I was reading. I still do that in a reading journal, but also I just kind of miss having this space and this sort of community. I honestly kind of feel bad because I've read some really amazing books, especially at the top of last year, and I really would have loved to talk about it on this platform. I didn't end up doing that, but I love a good reread, so I'm not worried because I want to get back to those at some point. And I still do have that experience documented for me in a reading journal. Still, at least I have the personal, private part, which is nice because that's the most important thing for me. I read 2 books last month. They are 2 kind of tiny-ish books. The first book that I read is Essays in Love by Alain de Botton. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm sorry. Honestly, I was drawn to it because of the cover, which is... Sorry about the glare. A lady just sitting in a library, between the stacks, and there's the color red, the red on the shelves, the red of her shirt, I'm just gonna move it closer. Sorry about the glare. But I just thought it was striking. I also had heard about this through a writer that I really like, that I've talked about a lot, Sarah Nicole Burkett. I don't remember where exactly, but she quoted something from here, so I vaguely knew about this book, but I didn't, I wasn't looking for it. But I really, really loved this. It is apparently a novel, but it's kind of written in fragments. So if you've read A Lover's Discourse by Roland Barthes, which was the one book that kept coming through my head the entire time I was reading this, this and the way it's structured would kind of make sense to you. This is what a chapter looks like. It's very much these little paragraph fragments. And I also thought the structure was interesting because it's fiction, but it's using the vessel of fiction to kind of explore these philosophical ideas about love and being in a relationship. It's sort of tracking the relationship between the narrator and this woman he meets. What's her name? Chloe, French queen. But it's kind of tracking the progress, and so each chapter takes you through a stage in their relationship, from culmination to certain things that come up, saying I love you, all the way to the end, right? It's weird to me how much this book endeared itself to me, because at first I was a little skeptical, and I think the first couple of pages, to me, the strongest parts of the book are in those philosophical, profound sort of realizations that the narrator is making and Alain de Botton is making as well. And some of it is not necessarily new or out of this world. I think when it comes to something like this, especially when it comes to the topic of love, it's kind of hard to escape cliches. And I don't think you're necessarily coming to a discussion like that with the sense of oh, this is cliche and we need to avoid this. Am I making the sense that I'm trying to make? To me, the gems were in his sentences and his thought processes, and kind of seeing how we're the little art historical or philosophical anecdotes and passages that he's referencing to make the point that he's making of a contemporary, this is 20th century, but a contemporary idea of love and modern dating. Honestly, it's really a fun read. I found myself writing a lot of quotes in my reading journal and just kind of I mean, like, the first chapter, the first line, the longing for a destiny is nowhere stronger than a romantic life. And then just kind of like going off of that, here's this other one. From within love, we conceal the chance nature of our lives behind a purposive veil. We invent a destiny to spare ourselves the anxiety that would arise from acknowledging that the little sense there is in our lives is merely created by ourselves. We charm by coincidence rather than design. Few things are as antithetical to sex as thought. I think it's a fun read, especially like depending on where you are in your relationship, and if you're anything like me, like you're tracking, you're like, oh, I did go through that phase, or this is how I'm feeling now, or reflecting on past like dalliances and past like, I don't know, like situationships and shit that you've done in relationships. That's also like how I read A Love is Discourse by Roland Barthes, which I still haven't finished. We're working on completing that library. Yeah, just a charming little, and also just like a creative novel too, in the sense of just the container and like, you know, I don't know, it's not like a straightforward novel. To be honest, some of the weakest parts of it were like the dialogue, or the sections where we're actually like seeing, you know, it's like an anecdote of the relationship, and then we're extrapolating to discuss these other wider themes of love and being in a relationship. So yeah, those parts were like decent, you know. I don't necessarily feel compelled to read like another like full-fledged novel of his. I'm not opposed to it, but like this to me was such a fun read. I followed that up with, to be honest, what quickly became something that I would consider like a favorite novel, Indelicacy by Amina, Cain, and once again, I'm so sorry about the glare. I loved this. It's one of those like deceptively simple novels that pack like really, really, how do I want to put this? Hold on, I have to consult the reading journal. My first impressions were that it was sort of folkloric, and it seemed like it was like out of time. Like the writing, the setting, like the more you read it, the more like it paints more of a picture, but like it does kind of read like a folklore. You get this strong sense of our main character, whose name we don't learn about until like midway through the novel. It is about a cleaning woman at a museum, and she wants to be a writer. She has this really strong desire to create, and it's one of his novels that's about being a woman and about wanting to make art and like wanting to have a creative life and prioritizing a creative life. She kind of escapes her situation when she meets this wealthy man, and we sort of see her kind of like, you know, explore this newfound wealth, explore the tensions between the newfound wealth and this newfound freedom, and also the trappings of said freedom, because, you know, becoming a wife and all of these womanly like domestic expectations that are put on her, or you know, being with this man of this status and the things that, you know, the way she has to sort of conform, but her way of not doing that. But it's like, even when you have like, you know, she escaped the situation of poverty, which hindered her from like working on her art. Not fully though, because one thing that truly perseveres through the novel is her desire and her will, and her will, even when she was in poverty, meant that she was still creating, right? But she escapes poverty, which allows her like more free time and more of all of this, and yet she's not truly free. But then she is still making her art, still like consuming art, and, you know, embodying art. It's really, really beautiful in that sense, like that will. And then there's also like her female friendships and the women that she loves and how she loves them and their art and their desires. And I don't know, it's literally one of my favorite novels, and it's so like, I could read this again. I think I finished it like, okay, when do I go again? Like, it's so good and so rich, and all of this in something that's so simple and also so like ghostly. Okay, yeah, I wrote this in my reading journal. Her love of art, of music, of the ballet, and of course of reading, all of it makes her want to write. This novel feels so dear to me already, breathy, still, filmy, but dense in a way, laden beneath like the gauze with all the histories of women's work and art history, and that stirring of these personal desires and ideas and thoughts deemed dangerous like till this day. I don't know, it was such a beautiful like delicate read, and I loved like reading about women's like creative work. One of my favorite movies of all time is My Brilliant Career. It's such a beautiful movie, because it honestly follows like a similar storyline, and I find myself like attracted to these storylines. But she, like Sabina in the movie, really wants to be a writer, and she wants to have this brilliant career, and she does get the opportunity to escape the poverty that she was born into through marriage and through romance, and she kind of rejects that. Spoiler. And there's something like really emboldening about that, and really like beautiful in the sense of these women choosing to carve out their independence, carve out this path for themselves, and just kind of like focus on that. It's kind of it's almost like not saintly, but like it's like a calling. There's a sense of like the higher power. It's like choosing to disregard the world for, you know, religious reasons, to become a priest, to become a nun, but this is for like art and other creative means. And I think there's something about me that is really attracted to the stories and like finds that like genuinely like beautiful. I'm not like religious anymore, so maybe that's also where it might be coming out from. I don't consider myself a spiritual person, but this feels like as close to something like that as I could ever get. Something so beautiful about the prose and like the simplicity of the prose that doesn't necessarily come down to like sentences. Like I did write sentences, not as much as I wrote when I was reading Essays in Love. I don't know, at some point I wrote that, you know, it had like a sense of a manifesto at some point, which I think I do agree with myself on that. But yeah, just really beautiful. So those were the two books that I read in August. Thank you so much for watching.